Week 3 of college football action helped us create some more separation, and I think we've got a pretty clear understanding of who deserves to be in the top 10 amongst all the teams in the country. Starting us off with my top 3 that has not moved since the past few weeks. First of all, Georgia at number 1. I understand that they were down at the half against South Carolina, and I think that a lot of people want to use this as an opportunity to say, oh, they look weak. They're showing signs of weakness. They're down at the half to a South Carolina team that has a weak offensive line. They're not a very well-rounded roster. But we watched what Georgia could do once they decided that they wanted to actually play in the second half. They dominated defensively. They beat up on Spencer Rattler, and they closed out that game with ease. They're good enough that when they start a game flat the way that they did against South Carolina, that they can recover instantly. This game reminded me a lot of the way that they played against Missouri last year. I'm not worried about it. I think that this is just one of those instances where they said, it's South Carolina. We don't need to go full speed. They have notoriously done this under Kirby Smart, especially last year. Number 2, Michigan, their win over Bowling Green. J.J. McCarthy struggled a little bit, but now in week 4, they get a chance to play Rutgers, which is actually doing pretty good this year. Not the same dog walk type opponent that they've been in the past. Michigan's still going to win that game pretty easily, even though I've been in on my Rutgers homerism. However, I don't think that Michigan has been in a position where they've really had to unleash. They're not going to show everything in these first 3 weeks of the season against non-conference, lower-level opponents. So it is what it is. I'm sticking with them at number 2. Number 3, Florida State. A lot of people are overreacting to the game that they played against Boston College. And I understand, and I think there's definitely things to take away from that. I think this is similar to the way that Georgia showed up for South Carolina, where they just played a sloppy game. Castellanos is a really electric athlete at quarterback, and it made things really difficult for that team to corral. A lot of times when there's upsets or close games with bad opponents, it's because of a really athletic quarterback that picks up a lot of long gains and stresses a defense that maybe wasn't expecting to be challenged as much as they were. Also, apparently, and I don't know this for certainty, but it was talked about before this game that the travel situation for Florida State was terrible. So I think that with the hurricane, whatever the weather going on the East Coast in near Florida might have impacted their situation. So I take that into account for Florida State. Number 4, I am planting my flag on Washington. They deserve to be the number 4 team in the country. They're one of the few teams, and maybe the only team this year, that has played decent opponents. They've played a much better and more difficult schedule than USC, who has played nobody up until this point, and they have dominated on a week-to-week basis. I understand that Michigan State is dealing with a lot of locker room drama, and their head coach is now being fired, and it's really hard to get up for a game when you're dealing with all of that. But at the same time, that is still a P5 opponent that you showed up and completely wiped 41-7 and putting up 500 passing yards in the game. That is a dominant performance, and they are going to continue to get better as this season progresses. Number 5, Texas. I think Texas showed a little bit of weakness, but I'm not reading into it too much. I'm only swapping Washington and Texas because I just think that Washington has been more consistently dominant. And as I kind of predicted, Texas laid a little bit of an egg because they got so up for Alabama, and then you show up to play a bad Wyoming team, and you're thinking like, oh, what kind of a challenge is this going to be? And it turns out it was a little bit more than they expected. They still ended up pulling away when they needed to, and ended up winning this game pretty handedly. Number 6, USC, they didn't play this past weekend. I didn't move them. I'm sticking with them there. I'm not going to make any moves until I think that they get a really defining win for this season. 7, Penn State. Penn State, another team that showed, a little bit of struggles early on in this game against Illinois. Their offensive line got beat up a little bit by Illinois' defensive front, which has been elite over the past couple of years. Georgian Newton dominated, played a really good football game. I'm starting to see, though, that Penn State lacks the receivers to really threaten the way that some people hope that they can. And I was really hoping that Penn State was going to be able to show some of that stuff against Illinois, but instead you saw a lot of drop balls. You saw a lot of, lack of ability to connect with the receivers in this game. Instead, Drew Allar had to rely on his tight ends, and he also had to rely on his running backs to produce the very little passing yardage that they had in this game, but still a good win nonetheless, keeping them firmly at the number 7 spot. Number 8, Ohio State. just the circumstance of them not having played anybody. A nice win over Western Kentucky, which is why I had them ahead of Notre Dame currently sitting in this top 10 here. They're finally going to be able to separate themselves with the way that they play against Notre Dame this upcoming Saturday. And the same thing goes for Notre Dame. I thought Notre Dame has looked fantastic. I'm trying not to be a homer and putting them ahead of Ohio State because I am a Notre Dame fan, but they have shown that they do belong in that top 10 conversation, the way that they've played against a weak slate, dominating most of that weak slate. But I think that NC State win is a really nice one that a lot of these other top 10 teams do not have. I got rid of Alabama. I'm done ranking Alabama in the top 10. Unless they get a win over Georgia, which I don't even think is on their schedule this year, I'm not moving them up. They are horrendous offensively. Horrendous. They are going to lose another game or two that is going to really impact their final record this year. I decided that I want to put LSU here in this top 10, and until they make another mistake, they falter and lose another game that they're not supposed to, or a game that they're not supposed to, I don't see a reason why not to put LSU at number 10. They kicked the crap out of Mississippi State, and I know that Mississippi State is one of the lower teams in the SEC this year, but the way that they showed up all four quarters, dominated. Malik Neighbors, Jaden Daniels exploded in this game. I know that LSU is as good as I thought that they were coming into the season. Let me know what you think. Drop a comment, hit that subscribe button. We'll be back. Make sure you check out BetOnline for all of your sports betting needs. For anything that I do betting related, I go on over to betonline.ag and I use promo code BELIEVE50. BetOnline has all of the latest updated odds for the NFL and college football seasons. Anything you need, whether it's futures, live in-game betting, no matter what, your football betting needs are met at BetOnline. And again, make sure you use that promo code BELIEVE50, BLEAV50 to get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts.